What's good, YouTube? It's your boy Jamar, man. I'm back at it again. Today we got how Nazi gas chambers actually work. If you're new to the channel, make sure to drop a like, comment, subscribe. Subscribe to the channel, help your boy grow. Let's get right into it.
Chambers in order to conduct one of the most brutal genocidal campaigns in human history. There's no lighthearted way to approach this shockingly gruesome and tragic historical event. So let's get right to it. Here's how Nazi gas chambers actually worked. In 1939, trouble was brewing in Europe. Adolf Hitler had by now become a full-fledged dictator, and the Nazi Party ruled Germany with an iron fist. Being a raging anti-Semite, backed by other raging anti-Semites, Hitler had succeeded in convincing a fair amount of people that the Jewish population of Germany, and Europe at large, was to blame for most of society's ills. Of course, there were other groups Hitler wished to be rid of as well. Besides his political adversaries, he believed Roma, homosexual people, and the mentally or physically disabled, just to name a few, had no right to exist in German society. The Nazis wanted to capture and eventually exterminate these people. This meant that they were searching for the most efficient methods with which to do so. Enter the euthanasia program in 1939, a program of mass murder targeting institutionalized patients that was far from euthanasia as anything we can imagine. According to Webster's, euthanasia is the painless killing of a patient suffering from an incurable and painful disease or an irreversible coma. Though it is still a highly contentious practice, illegal in many countries, euthanasia requires either the consent of a mentally able patient approaching the end of their life or a medical professional's assessment that a patient's comatose state is irreversible. What the Nazi Party did instead was a trial run for murder on a mass scale. Calling the start of their genocide a euthanasia program was one of the many ways in which they attempted to cover unthinkably evil actions with misleading euphemisms and language. Nazis believed those who were severely physically, mentally, or neurologically disabled were a financial burden on the German state, a genetic burden on German society, and should be eliminated. And because the Nazis were truly trying their hardest to ensure an express ticket to hell, they started this elimination with the mass murder of children. Hitler's private chancellery director, Philip Buhler, and his attending physician, Karl Brandt, hatched an initial plan for what would become the euthanasia program in the spring of 1939. On August 18, 1939, the Reich Ministry of the Interior decreed that all medical professionals were to report any infants under the age of 3 who showed signs of physical or mental disabilities to the state. A couple of months later, parents were encouraged to admit their disabled children to special pediatric clinics in Germany and Austria. The reality, as anyone who has read World War II history can imagine.
Hey, that's crazy. I take out the time right now to drop a like on the video, man. Drop a like on the video.
Years from what the parents were told. The special pediatric clinics were in fact killing centers. Staff hired specifically for this purpose would murder the children in their custody, either by starvation or lethal overdose. As time went on, older and older children were admitted to these centers. At least 10,000 disabled German children were murdered through the euthanasia program, though the true numbers are likely higher and may never be known. However, the methods of killing disabled children, we hate that that sentence exists in a world where time and energy consuming, according to the sociopaths spearheading the extermination. And they were about to extend their cruelty to adult patients as well, under the guise of a T4 campaign, meaning a rapid increase in the amount of people targeted for murder. This led to the first use of gassing for mass murder. The Nazi Party quickly established 6 gassing centers throughout the country: Bernburg, Brandenburg, Grafeneck, Hadamar, Hartheim, and Sonnenstein.
I don't understand none of that.
They weren't called gassing centers in the press. Questionnaires were distributed to the hospitals with patients filling in information about their health issues. Special emphasis was placed on any effect the conditions had on the patient's ability to work. Anyone considered unable to fully participate in the labor force was transported to these camps and killed. The first camps used pure carbon monoxide gas, as in most killing camps, the gas chambers were disguised as showers, so patients wouldn't know the fate that awaited them. The bodies of their victims were then burned in adjacent crematoria, and ashes were placed in urns at random in order to be delivered to their family members. Physicians and administrators hired by the Nazis would list fictional, most often natural causes of death on any death certificate sent to the surviving family. Though the Nazi Party tried to hide the reality of what was happening in these gas chambers, it quickly became an open secret to the German public. Protests took place throughout Germany, and several members of the German clergy spoke out against the practice. Due to public pressure, Hitler temporarily, very temporarily, halted the euthanasia program in August of 1941, but it was too late. Between January 1940 and August 1941, approximately 70,723 institutionalized patients had been gassed. For the Nazis, the
Bro,
program had been a success.
what?
They'd found a brutal and grotesquely efficient killing method they would perfect and use throughout the course of the Holocaust and World War II, the gas chambers. And unbeknownst to most of the world at large, they were already employing this method elsewhere. In June 1941, Germany invaded the Soviet Union. The Einsatzgruppen, the mobile killing units of the SS or Schutzstaffel, were tasked with a mass shooting of civilians. As the invasion continued, members of the Einsatzgruppen complained that shooting so many women and children was causing them mental anguish and fatigue. In order to make the jobs of the Einsatzgruppen soldiers easier, the Nazi command gave them gas vans, which had occasionally been previously used in the invasion of Poland, but not systematically. These vans were
Bro, that's
vacuum-sealed
really
trunks,
crazy.
where
You
the
have to
engine
think about
exhaust in the
this.
form of carbon
I
dioxide
didn't even think
would be
about,
diverted
like,
and pumped into the van's interior. This method quickly suffocated the people the
other people
Einsatzgruppen soldiers
just
locked inside. The use of gas vans, thanks to the fact that they were
was
both
doing
an
the
efficient
killing,
and
like
cost-saving method of mass murder, quickly became widespread, with civilian communities on the front lines.
the shooting,
However, at some point in 1941, the SS
like
decided
order
that
to
in order
shoot
to
people.
achieve the final solution, the horrible euphemism given to the Nazi Party's decision to exterminate all Jewish people on the continent, larger and more efficient gassing
So
methods
many
would need to
people,
be
yeah.
implemented. The SS had already started sending Jewish people and Roma to killing centers such as Chelmno, where they were rounded up and killed in the aforementioned gas vans. To accelerate the genocide of the Jewish population, stationary gas chambers were now built into the extermination camps of Belzec, Sobibor, and Treblinka in Poland. By 1942, these gas chambers were fully operational. Carbon monoxide gas was still the poison of choice, pumped into the chambers by diesel engines. Victims were often told to pack in tightly with arms raised in order to fit in more people to the chamber and accelerate their suffocation by carbon monoxide. The final and deadliest of many attempted methods would be used at the most infamous and destructive extermination camp of all, Auschwitz. To improve the efficiency of their killings, the
Bro, I
SS
could
had
not say
started
a lot of
experiments
those
with other
words.
toxins for suffocation, including
Auschwitz.
Zyklon B.
Like
The
what?
chemical came in the form of amethyst blue pellets
What is that?
and was originally used for fumigation of pests. The Nazis realized that when the pellets came into contact with the air, they became exceptionally lethal gas, known as hydrocyanic or prussic acid. After conducting an experiment in September 1941 by gassing 600 Soviet prisoners of war and 256 prisoners, they concluded that Zyklon B killed people more rapidly than any toxins the SS had experimented with before. Thus, Zyklon B was chosen for use in Auschwitz. The killing machine that was the Auschwitz death camp worked frighteningly well. Members of the SS would march people chosen for death to the gas chambers. Anyone disabled or too weak to walk would be transported in trucks. Initially, only Crematorium 1 was used, though by 1943, captured people were being escorted to Crematoria 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Nah,
Jewish
that's
people,
ridiculous,
Roma, and
man.
other victims would be
I
ordered
ain't
to
gonna lie.
disrobe, either in wooden barracks, an antechamber, or outside, depending on how many people were being transported to Auschwitz that day and how crowded the camp was. The SS soldiers kept up the charade of the chambers being showers, where the prisoners had to bathe and disinfect themselves before entering camp. Afterwards, men, women, and children were locked into the chamber as the large door of the entrance was sealed off. A masked soldier would then open a vent on the roof to pour Zyklon B pellets into the chamber. He would then immediately close the vent to seal off the gas chamber completely. The victims, who were packed in tightly to begin with, had no way out, as the gas from the Zyklon B pellets filled the air and inevitably their lungs. They would quickly, usually in a matter of a few minutes, suffocate and die. After the soldiers
Sad,
outside believed everyone to be dead, the toxic air was pumped out of the chamber for approximately 15 minutes. During the biggest mass deportations to Auschwitz in the years of 1943 and 44, the Nazi-operated gas chambers, with the use of Zyklon B, killed an average of 6,000 Jewish people and others per day.
6,000
Some Jewish
people
were deported to the camp
and
or
others.
members of the
Man,
Sonder
bro, that
Kommando.
6,000
Though
people,
they avoided
bro.
being killed right away,
A
the
day.
enslaved Jewish members of the Sonder Kommando underwent another kind of hell. The Nazis had observed the mental toll close contact with dead bodies had taken on the German soldiers unloading the gas vans after their victims had been murdered. To avoid their soldiers being negatively affected by such sights as much as possible, the Nazis forcibly tasked a group of Jewish prisoners with entering the gas chambers after each gassing. The Sonderkommando members were made to pry apart the dead bodies using poles and hose down the gas chambers. They were also forced to burn the bodies of their fellow murdered Jewish brothers and sisters, collect any gold fillings or jewelry they came across, as well as women's hair, and throw the ashes of the victims into a nearby river. If any bones hadn't burned down completely, the men of the Sonderkommando had to grind them down and also throw them in the river or in a landfill. One of the Sonderkommando members, a Greek Jew and former resident of Thessaloniki by the name of Marcel Nanjari, wrote down a very accurate description of what took place in Auschwitz, a gruesome reality the Nazi Party tried to hide from the eyes of the world. Najjari describes the gas chamber facilities as such. The crematorium is a big building with a wide chimney and 15 ovens. Under a garden, there are 2 enormous cellars. One is where people undress, and the other is the death chamber. People enter it naked, and once about 3,000 are inside, it's locked and they are gassed. After 6 or 11 minutes of suffering, they die.
3,000 people in one room.
Conscription to the Sonderkommando, Najjari had to escort victims to the chambers and saw many groups enter and die. He knew exactly what the gas chambers were. However, the Nazis, in order to keep up the ruse that the chambers were showers to potential victims, even went so far as to install pipes and fake shower heads into the room. In fact, the Nazi plan to hide the atrocities being committed at Auschwitz extended to almost every aspect of the gas chambers, including the hidden delivery of the Zyklon B itself in hermetically sealed canisters. As Najjari writes, the gas canisters were always delivered in a German Red Cross vehicle with 2 SS men. They then dropped the gas through the openings, and half an hour later, our work began. We dragged the bodies of those innocent women and children to the lift, which took them to the ovens. Najjari wrote 13 pages of letters detailing the horrors of Auschwitz, which he stuffed into a sealed thermos flask and buried near one of the crematoriums. Miraculously, Najjari would survive Auschwitz, though many of his fellow Sonderkommando members didn't. At one point, Najjari describes a revolt of the Sonderkommando who attempted to blow up the crematoria at Auschwitz using gunpowder stolen from Nazi soldiers. The revolt failed and all participating members were executed. Gas chambers led to the death of millions of Jewish victims, Roma, homosexuals, disabled people, and others in Auschwitz and many extermination camps. Though accurate numbers may be nearly impossible to collect, historians estimate that approximately 6 million Jewish people and 5 million others were killed during the Holocaust, the vast majority of those in gas chambers. Though this was not one of our easier videos, we hope it was an informative one.
Yeah, this is very informative, bro. It's feel like school.
Now that you made it to the end and have about 4,000 more reasons to hate Hitler, perhaps...
Yeah, bro, but if you're new to the channel, man, I mean, if y'all enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, comment, subscribe, man. Catch me in the next one, bro.